What is up, everybody? Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time checking out the channel, or if you're a long-time viewer, don't forget to subscribe. I got videos every single day, but today's video is going to be something cool. As you guys all know, if you've watched my video, you've watched my collection tour, I love the Jakks Classic Superstars line. And today we're going to go series by series and talk about the Jakks Classic Superstars version of LJN figures, like this Undertaker I have here for an example. Towards the end of the line, middle, series 13, I believe is the start, they decided to release LJN-inspired figures. Jeremy Padower, the godfather of Jakks Classic Superstars, and Jakks, basically you would call him, recently on a Twitter Q&A, talked about this was his love letter, his love note to the LJNs he grew up with. To me, it was a little bit of a misstep, to be honest with you. I also grew up with LJNs. I love LJNs, but LJNs are LJNs. I wanted an LJN line. That would have been fine. Keep it separate. But I wanted the Classic Superstars to be Classic Superstars. And my immediate thoughts on this when they started down the road of putting one of these in each set was, we're losing a spot for somebody we could have had. There's that spot for Macho Man. There's that spot for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. There's that spot for many other classic guys that we would have got, hopefully, eventually. If Jeremy and Jakks wanted to do this line so bad, I would have loved to do it kind of like Mattel did with the retros. They didn't stick a Hasbro and an Elite and put one in each series. They made it its own world. That's what I would have loved to have seen with these LJN figures. Maybe make them an online ringside exclusive, for example. I think would have been a great idea. But it was a mixed bag with a lot of collectors at the time, and me included. I didn't really care for them. Even though I had a soft spot for LJNs, these just did not do it for me at the time. But a lot of people do like them. There seems to be a renewed interest. We're in 2020 now. There seems to be a lot of love given to these that was really not there the last few years, for sure. They were kind of an afterthought. Not a lot of people thought much of them. That is what I would say. But here we are, 2020. What's old is new again, and people are really loving these. And let's walk down. I'll show you each one, series by series, and we'll go through them and talk about them. Should be an exciting adventure. All right, let's start at the beginning. Series 13 is where the LJNs were introduced into the Classic Superstars lineup. The Undertaker being the first one, kind of the godfather of the WWE at the time. I think this was a smart choice. I would have said him or Austin as the first one if I had to do it. The interesting thing was with these LJN figures, they were used as the basically current superstars, or just superstars of a couple years past were made in this. They didn't do any deep cuts. You didn't see a Bob Backlund or an Ernie Ladd or Luna Vachon or any people like that in these figures. It was more heavy hitter superstars, which is smart. That draws in the most people to want them. Made sure these wouldn't warm the shelves. But, in my area, at least the Midwest, these LJN figures warmed the shelves pretty good. They were one per case. That didn't really seem to matter because I could see a lot of kids, hey, I'm buying this or whatever. I don't need this. You can't really play with these. They just didn't fit in with the current figures that were out of the day. That's just the honest truth, and that's why you saw a lot of these warming the pegs in the Midwest. Correct me if I'm wrong, if maybe East Coast, West Coast, Canada, foreign countries out there, maybe you guys saw something different that I didn't. But I remember these clogging the shelves pretty good, even though they were one per case. So here it is, the Undertaker, the first one. The first thing you notice is the blue. Traditional Jakks Classic Superstars are completely black around. This put the nice blue. You can see that LJN type stripe, I guess you would call it. I'm not going to lie, it hit me in the nostalgia feels for sure. It's just not what I was looking for at the time. But a very cool blue packaging, how they brought it all back. But they also kept it with the Classic Superstars logo, the foil, the star and all that we're so accustomed to. And that's what Jakks Classic Superstars is known for. So it was a great way to integrate them. I think they did the best job they could integrating the two. There it is on the blue. On the side, the Undertaker. Once again, you knew exactly what you were seeing. When you were going through the pegs, you saw these, you definitely knew, hey, it's the LJN figure because of the blue. Here it is on the back. They have a little product shot of the Undertaker, the LJN version. You can see the rest of Series 13, the regular series. We got Bret Hart, Bad News Brown, Rick Rude, Draws, Dusty Rhodes, Al Snow, Ernie Ladd, Luna Vachon, Brother Love, Mr. Perfect, and the Mountie. I remember Ernie Ladd and Luna Vachon being very difficult to get. as I believe they were one per case or one every couple of cases, something to that nature. But there it is. Collect them all in the back. The Undertaker, we can talk about him a little bit. You know, he's got the typical pose he would do, the white eyes, the trench coat, black trench coat, but stuck in place. There was no mobility, like we've said before with these. The back of the package says they debut in 1989, 328 pounds, 6'10". Finishing move, the chokeslam, tombstone pile driver, last ride. Titles, WWE Champion, World Tag Team Champion, and Heavyweight Champion. And then classic superstars that they had on every box. Watch for more of your favorite classic superstars from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And watch I did, let me tell you. I was so anxious for new series of classic superstars every time they came out. Later series getting very difficult to find. But here he is. This is the Undertaker. You know, this is a more modern day Undertaker at the time. He has the Sarah tattoo on his neck, which was later removed, probably the later half of 2000s, I want to say. I'm not a total expert on his coming and goings of his tattoos, but I remember noticing that right away on here. But there it is, Series 13, Classic Superstars, The Undertaker. All right, we roll on into Series 14, and now this one threw us all for a loop. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Obviously, it was probably a production mishap at the factory. A botch job, I don't know what happened, but as you'll notice on this one, the Undertaker first series, he had the blue on the side. Well, this gave us the Classic Superstars traditional packaging with the black on the side. You can see Stone Cold, there's the figure picture. You can see the name in the traditional black and gold lettering, and you can see the figure itself, of course. But it was very interesting. These went to black, so I thought, oh, that Undertaker, that was just a one-time deal, or they did it special for him. Nobody really knew what was going on. A lot of people nowadays would say, oh, that's so Jakks, just them going back and forth. But the first releases of this figure came in this packaging. And I was a pre-order day one Ringside Collectibles way back when these were coming out, and that's where I got this from. So this was the black, which was very interesting. But then later on, and I'm still searching for this in my collection. I could have had it many times over the years. Back then when these were going on, it didn't matter to me. I said, I don't need it. I don't need the blue. They changed the packaging. It was a running change. They put it to the traditional blue, or not. I don't know about traditional at this point, but it ended up being traditional. But they gave it the same package we saw in that last Undertaker with the blue on the sides. Like I said, I passed on that. Now that one is worth a heck of a lot more than the black one. Still not crazy. I think a lot of people don't know what they have. It's one of those things, it's rare, but is it worth a ton? I don't know. However, I do feel that if I do ever come across one that's in good condition at a good price, I would pick it up just for the heck of it at this point in my life. But back then, nah, did nothing for me. This is, like I said, Stone Cold, and I did not like the position they gave him in. You know, he's stuck with the flexing pose. We don't really think of Stone Cold flexing, that is for sure. Just kind of looks strange. I don't know. There's got to be a different pose they could have put him in. Maybe the John Cena pose we'll see a little bit later. But once again, kind of an afterthought for me. Kind of a, oh boy, I would have rather had a different classic. That's for sure. We'll look at the back here. First thing I noticed when I look at the back is I look at Abdullah the Butcher, how he had a skinnier body at one point. They put him in that really extra large body later on. I also note Bob Backlund back there. He has a singlet on where we all know the release was actually just red trunks. But a very cool lineup, that's for sure, on the back with some of these. That Sherry's a great one that I loved a lot. And then obviously Demolition. You can't go wrong ever with the Demolition and Ultimate Warrior figures. But there is Stone Cold, a very interesting one in the line. An anomaly, if you will, that was a little bit of a mess, obviously, with messing up the packaging on this. If you guys got a lead on a blue one, or one of you guys get them away, hit me up. I may be interested. But that is Series 14, Stone Cold Steve Austin. All right, we move on to Series 15, and the heavy hitters continue. We saw The Undertaker. We saw Stone Cold. Well, naturally, who's next? The Rock. So that's what we got, The Rock. Back to the traditional blue packaging. They never faded from this the entire way of the line. That Austin was just one-time mess-up. You can see the side of the packaging with the LJN throwback. Blue, The Rock, and the blue on the side there. And then there's The Rock. And I guess getting ready to drop the people's elbow, we would say. I guess that's fair. I don't know. Well, like I said, this line was a little different. The figure packaging much heavier than a traditional figure. There's The Rock on the back. You can see some of the other lineups included. Some good ones. I love that Genius figure, a very underrated figure, that Genius. Same with, I believe, yeah, Tully Blanchard on the back of this one. I love that one as well. But here's The Rock. You know, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, his favorite quote, as we all know. But there it is, The Rock, dropping the people's elbow. Got the people's eyebrow up, of course. Got The Rock on the tights. All black knee pads, armbands, black boots. And there it is. So there is The Rock. The train kept rolling to Series 16, and that's where we got Shawn Michaels, who was not an active performer at the time of this release, so it did seem kind of like a classic superstar, a recent classic superstar, you would say. But Shawn is a little bit heavier. I always noticed the weight on this one just being a little bit more weighty than some of the other ones. Shawn also not in his ring gear. He's in his entrance gear, which is a different... I actually prefer, as an adult collector in this, I prefer them to be in something like this gear. Whereas a kid, you absolutely hated it. You're like, why is he in his ring gear? I'm going to have to play with him and wrestle in ring gear. But for this, it didn't bother me. There it is on the side, the blue, with a little picture of him. And there's the side with the traditional blue for these packaging. And then the back, you got the big picture, close-up face of him. Like I said, this is Series 16, Shawn Michaels. Great sets down here in the back, talking about the powers of pain. One I'd love to see Mattel try one day. Giant Gonzalez, one of my all-time favorite figures. I know people don't like the character very much, but just talk about toyetic. Jakks got that totally right. But Shawn Michaels is what we're here to talk about in his entrance gear. Kind of a weird facial expression with his mouth wide open. And like he's looking to the stars, I guess. I don't know. But that is what it is, Class of 16. I remember this one sitting on shelves around me for a very long time, well into the 18, 19 sets. It just was not at all popular, and I don't know if that was Shawn not being on TV, people not liking the pose, or what the reasons were. But like I said, this was a pretty big peg warmer in my area back in the day. So there it is, the man, Shawn Michaels, HBK. In his LJN Throwback Classic Superstars. Well, we just talked about Classic Superstars Series 16, Shawn Michaels, which gets us to Classic Superstars 17, Triple H, fellow member of DX, when Triple H was finally kind of coming into his own. There it is, Triple H, kind of the cool pose when he's getting ready to spit his water. I really like the pose on this one. This is a very light figure compared to, we talked about HBK being a little heavier. This Triple H was always a little bit lighter. There's the side packaging there with the LJN-inspired look. There's the name. And we get to the back there. You got the big picture of his head and face up there. Now, I do enjoy this Triple H figure. I do like Triple H. Later year Triple H. Wasn't a big Blue Bloods Triple H guy, Greenwich Triple H guy, but I did like this era of Triple H a whole lot. I especially love the facial hair. I actually rocked this same exact facial hair myself back in about 2004. Yeah, I wouldn't say in tribute to Triple H. It was in tribute to my boy Lemmy Kilmister, of course. Triple H also donned this as a tribute to Lemmy I'd heard in the past, and also tribute to Harley Race, who wore this same facial hair scheme for a long time. But I like to think of this as the Lemmy tribute figure a little bit. Or maybe tribute to Kyle Peterson, since I wore that as well. But a good figure for what this is. You know, a diehard Triple H fan, I would definitely have this. I guess that goes for all these figures. If you're a diehard collector of that figure and you love that superstar, you got to have it. I don't care what you're going to try to tell me. I like to be a completist, and I think you should be a completist. Especially, I get not being a completist on everything, but if you're a big Triple H fan, he's your favorite wrestler, you should work towards a complete Triple H collection. I think that's a cool thing. That's an honor to that guy, that wrestler, whoever it is. Pick that up. So there it is. One of my favorites in the line, Series 17, Triple H. All right, next up, Series 18, and it's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Love Ric Flair. Loved him since I was a little kid. Loved him to this day. Big fan of Ric Flair. I love that they used kind of an old-school, almost first title win Ric Flair against Harley Race. A real old-school Flair. They didn't go with a modern one, which was probably the safe bet and the best bet on this one. I remember this one being fairly hard to find back in the day. We talked about that Shawn Michaels warming pegs. Ric Flair did not warm pegs. And, You know, this was one as a kid. I don't know about you guys that are old enough to remember the LJN days. I wanted a Ric Flair LJN so bad. I remember just wishing there was a way they could have him. Never happened, of course. You know, a lot of my friends and myself even used Greg the Hammer Valentine as Ric Flair in their Fig Feds. I actually had 2 Greg Valentines. I got one from a buddy, and I used one as Ric Flair, and I used one as Greg Valentine, which is funny because they used to be a tag team back in the day. But here's the Ric Flair. You know, an interesting spot, interesting place they put him in. I don't really know what he's exactly doing. He's kind of got one hand out, like he's almost talking to somebody, saying, hey, but he hasn't got his hands up. Would have loved to see, you know, 4 fingers. Let me spit that out, huh? Would have liked to have seen 4 fingers up or something. It's just kind of a bland pose, but it is what it is. But there's the Flair face on the side. Of course, the nameplate, and of course the back, and with the picture of Flair, the Nature Boy, and then some of the upcoming and current day sets that were out at the time. That Mae Young was a classic one, still a good one, a must-have in everybody's collection if you ask me. That Rikishi, one of the worst ones. One of these days I'll probably do a top 10 worst Jakks Classic Superstars. That Rikishi could possibly make the list. That super heavyweight body worked for some, didn't work for others, and Rikishi looks weird with that really small head, but Series 18, Ric Flair. I'd say one of the betters, me being a Ric Flair loyalist. I had to have this either way. I would have had it in my collection even if I wasn't a completist, as obviously Ric Flair is a favorite of mine. So there it is, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. All right, we've gotten to Series 19 now, and we're looking at Mick Foley, Mankind. An interesting choice here. Personally, I would have loved to seen a Cactus Jack. I remember as a kid, my first memories of Mick Foley was Cactus Jack back in the Dallas territory, GWF and stuff like that used to be on ESPN when I was a little kid. It was awesome to see Cactus Jack go to WCW. I was very pleased, one of my favorite wrestlers in WCW. Then he went to Mankind, the rest was history. But I would have loved to have seen a Cactus Jack throwback. I think that would have been cool, but I think you got to think, you can't think with your heart, you got to think with your head a lot of times in business. I know it all too well. There's a lot of items and a lot of stuff I push and at work and stuff that I think should be huge successes that aren't. You got to let the consumer decide at the end of the day. That's who is going to tell you if it's a win or a loss, whether we like it or not. And I think they did the right thing, and they put Mankind in this get-up. For sure, because Cactus Jack probably would have sold, but wouldn't be as popular as this one. I think they just totally landed the pose. This is one of the better poses in this line with Mr. Sacco on there. Exactly how you would want him. At the end of the day, for me, these are display pieces, and I want them in a traditional pose or something they would do themselves. Unlike kind of like a Ric Flair. It looked like he was about ready to start his strut, but not quite there. I don't know, but this Mankind is good. A little bit smaller than the other ones I always noticed, which I always thought was kind of weird. There's the side graphic picture with his face, like we've been seeing. Got the name, of course, Mankind. And then there it is, the big face on the back. You also see some of the upcoming lines. That Adam Bomb and Kevin Sullivan, 2 pricey figures, but must-haves if you ask me. I wish we could get Mattels of them. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. But here it is. This is the Mankind. You know, I could have seen them also going the old school brown shirt, brown pants, Mankind. That would have been interesting. Maybe a variant, a Chase variant, and that would have been awesome. But alas, it was not meant to be. But this is the Mankind Series 19. A pretty solid figure as far as this line goes, in my opinion. All right, we've landed at Series 20 with John Cena. And you know, one thing I've said before on the Classic Superstars line, a lot of times guys came out and it left me scratching my head back in the day. I'd say, wait a minute, this isn't classic. Everybody in this line, for the most part, what we've shown with these LJN-inspired figures, were classic wrestlers that had classic careers and been around for a while at that point in time. Now, this was the start of the LJN ones where I said, wait a minute, John Cena's fairly new. How is he already in the Classic Superstars packaging? But you know, the true beauty of this line is time heals all wounds. You think now John Cena, he's a classic wrestler. You know, you ask any younger person to name 5 wrestlers, John Cena's probably going to be in those 5. So he is a classic superstar now. It's very interesting how that worked out, and that's part of the greatness of that line. People we didn't think were classic at the time, now traditionally are a classic superstar. You think of just some of the regular release ones, like they released a Steve Blackman. Very strange. He was just a few years out of the WWE at that point. Why is he a classic superstar? But now, all these years, 15, 20 years later, yeah, you know what? He is a classic superstar. He was around during the boom. He's a classic, and nobody's released him since. I love that we have that Steve Blackman figure in the classic line. But John Cena at the time, that's what I was thinking. So this is kind of more of your Dr. Thugonomics, early 5-knuckle shuffle John Cena. A little on the smaller side, kind of like that last Mankind. He got his 2 fists up in the air. He's got his patent jorts on, rocking those. There's the side packaging there. There's the top. There's that gold star. We haven't really talked about the gold classic star. I mean, that is that's what embodies the classic superstar lineup to me. That is its calling card. And one, if you know, if you think back in the day, I remember I was a mint on card guy for classics. Very, very difficult to get these mint on card at stores. A lot of times you'd see that classic superstar spike, bent over, damaged, ripped. Happened all the time. You know, there was some, just like today, there's still some chains out there, Walmarts and Targets. Some of those stores are rough on their figures. They didn't care. They don't view them as collectibles. They view them as toys, which they're partially right. But you would see a lot of damage, and there was nothing worse than breaking open a fresh case of classics that you needed, and they were all damaged. It was just a heartbreaking moment. Some of these later series were very hard to get. You know, most stores got one case and never got them again, if that at all. So that was very, very disappointing. I ordered all of mine back from Ringside. I know some people complain about Ringside shipping them damaged items, but I never had any problems with the classic superstars back in the day. They always shipped my stuff perfect. I never had the gold foil problems that some did. So that was great. But that is one thing that made classic superstars being mint in box very difficult with that star. That thing could get damaged very easily. But here's John Cena. We talked about him. I don't think we showed the back yet. There it is. Love that Dynamite Kid on the back. Another one I wish Mattel would make. But just kind of a very plain Jane figure at the time, that's for sure. You know, not a lot of bells and whistles here. There's no tattoo work. There's none of that stuff. It's just John Cena looking only like he can look. So there it is. Series 20, John Cena. Well, what comes after 20? Well, it's 21. Who knew? I can count. But here it is. Rey Mysterio. Orange pants. Orange edition. Rey Mysterio, another one. Similar to John Cena that was kind of just coming into his own in the WWE at this time. Obviously been in WCW, a little ECW, AAA down in Mexico, you name it. So I really liked this figure. I thought it was a good inclusion at the time of Rey. You know, very popular, just beginning to peak with his popularity, really taken off around this time. But there he is in the orange, the black, and here's the back packaging. You know, it's interesting, this figure is taller than the John Cena, where, you know, he's 5'6", but that's Jakks. Scale didn't really matter to Jakks a whole lot, as we saw throughout the years. To me, it didn't bother me a ton. I mean, it bothered me where I noticed it, but nobody had ever really made figures to scale. Everybody was usually the same size, so it was just kind of the way toys were. Down the line nowadays, you know, those are one things that companies do very well of, but back here in this time, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Scale was not that big a deal, and companies, I don't care who you were, didn't really make a lot of scale figures. They were all the same. But this is Rey Mysterio, one of the better ones in the line. All right, Series 22, Eddie Guerrero. We just talked about Rey. You can't really talk about Rey and his career without mentioning Eddie Guerrero somewhere, and kind of vice versa, I would say. Good friends, came through ECW, WCW, AAA, WWE. They've been around each other a long time, so it's only fitting they were back-to-back, much like Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the series. I didn't mind this figure. I love the pose that they're doing. You know, he's doing his little, you know, his shimmy that he used to do back in the day, and that's what was represented here. So I do like this figure. I think this is one of the better ones in the line. There's the traditional blue we've seen before, his name, and of course the back packaging there. Showing off our old friend Earthquake. That was another one I really liked, but I hated how big he was. Chainsaw Charlie on here, and Andy Kaufman. That Andy Kaufman is one of the jewel and gems of the lineup of the classic superstars. You know, a lot of people I remember complained back in the day, why is Andy Kaufman in here? As a kid, I watched Taxi reruns on Nick at Night as a kid. I loved Andy Kaufman in that show. I loved Taxi. Then I found out, you know, that Dave Letterman, Jerry Lawler clip. I saw that on some documentary back in the days, you know, when cable was, you know, is what it is. It's not like there was internet way back in the day as a kid. And I remember seeing Andy Kaufman, and then went back and watched his wrestling stuff, and I was just hooked. So I thought it was awesome that they included him in the Classic Superstars line. And it makes sense being Jeremy from the Tennessee area, growing up with that whole angle. If you've never checked it out, definitely do yourself. YouTube it. Check out those clips. Got off on a little tangent. We're talking about Eddie Guerrero, but I just saw that Andy Kaufman and it just jumped in my head. So, like I said, I love the shimmy on this one. This is one of the better ones. Series 22, of course. They even got the tattoo on there. You know, Jakks gets called out when they do bad things, but little details like that, especially back then, was a big deal. And, you know, they should be thanked for putting that tattoo in there and stuff like that. The little things, the nuances not everybody sees. So, very cool figure. Once again, Eddie Guerrero, Series 22. All right, moving into Series 23, and this is an interesting one. The first time ever in this line, they released a female figure. You know, the traditional LJN line had Miss Elizabeth, the manager series, but we didn't get any of the female wrestlers. And there wasn't, to be honest, a whole lot of female wrestlers back in the day that would have probably sold in the first place or that got a lot of TV time. The LJNs, you know, were a little bit around Wendy Richter's time, kind of. A little bit of moolah, but they never did come out with those ones in the traditional LJN line. So it was cool to see a female figure finally in here, as Trish Stratus kind of knocked the new wrestling female generation into its zenith and really laid the groundwork to what we have now with female wrestling. So very interesting. Trish getting in the line, which was good. However, this one was a total bust to me. I did not like this figure. No pun intended with the bust line. Very chesty. But Trish in this looks very Japanimation, you know. It looks like anime to me. The face, it's just, I don't know. They just missed this one entirely, in my opinion. It's way, way too cartoony compared to a lot of the other ones. It's just not right. It just doesn't look like it fits in the line at all. You can see the face there. I don't remember seeing this one a whole lot at the store. Apparently it sold a lot more than that Shawn Michaels one. But just a weird, I don't know. It's just weird. It's the anime, I think, that's getting me in this. It just doesn't seem like it fits in the line at all. But I was happy to see, hey, they put at least one female in this line. It's something to do. The back, you can see some of the other ones in that set. That Spike Dudley and Lance Storm are two I have mint on card, but boy, I would love loose versions. I wish I would have got them back in the day, as they're both very pricey figures. I do like that LOD as well, but there it is. Series 23, LJN inspired Trish Stratus. All right, next up, Series 24, and one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Monday Night, Rob Van Dam. Loved RVD. I've said it before, ECW saved me from dropping out of the wrestling game way back in the day. I needed something different, and ECW was that. And RVD was one of my favorites from ECW, and then into his WWE career as well. But really won my heart and stole it and never let go back in his ECW days. So thank you, Rob. But I'm not going to lie, I love RVD, but this figure, not so much. I give him props. I do love the traditional RVD thumb pose. I think that looks awesome. The size doesn't bother me a whole lot, but boy, that head scan does. They kind of pasted on a beard a little bit, which he always had kind of a 5 o'clock shadow going on, but it just doesn't look like Rob Van Dam to me. There's the side. There's the name. It's funny, he's got the beard. You can see it. So he's got the beard on the figure, but you go to the back, the earlier prototype or whatever, no beard. He needs to be somewhere in the middle between those two. Big miss with the RVD. But it is what it is at this point. There's no going back. There's no changing. So just like this whole line, this offshoot, a line in a line, this RVD was a miss for me, even though he's one of my all-time favorites. This series he came in, though, was very good at the British Bulldogs. I would love to see Mattel British Bulldogs one day, looking just like that. Come with the shirts. Just an awesome and a huge miss so far for Mattel. I hope one day they can close the deal on that. I'd love to see more Mattel Rob Van Dams as well. I'd love to see some flashback RVD figures in the line. So I don't know. I know he's with TNA right now, Impact. But would love to see some more RVD figures. But here it is. The RVD LJN inspired. All right, next up, Series 25. We talked about that Trish Stratus a couple of series ago, being a little bit too Japanimation or anime-looking inspired. Well, Jeff Hardy took it to a whole nother level. This is probably my least favorite in the entire line. You know, I'm hot and cold on Jeff Hardy. He's not my favorite. He's not my least favorite. You got to respect the guy, but not this figure. We can't respect the figure, unfortunately. Just a terrible face scan. He's kind of doing that pose he used to do, but man, that is brutal. Look at that on the side. Just absolutely brutal. I mean, I love the attention to detail with the beard and the crazy cutouts in there, but man, that face is bad. Just the worst. Just not a fan of this one at all. There you go, Jeff. Looking just terrible. I don't know. I just don't know what they were thinking. I get it. They were kind of getting him in mid-screen, but this is definitely my least favorite. It just does not look right. On the back, they got some serious heavy hitters on the back there. On the bottom there, the Briscoe brothers bring a hefty amount of money these days. That Haku is another one, very hefty and pricey. Even Bastion Booger, fairly pricey. This is the thing we love about the Classic Superstars line. They brought guys we never would have had a figure before. Who would have ever thought we would have had the Briscoe brothers tag team? Jerry and Jack. I mean, now we got a later year's Jerry, which isn't quite the same. I like this Jerry and Jack much better. The announcer, Jesse Ventura, and an awesome one that I just recently picked up to open up. Just a great series of some guys around this time. But this Jeff Hardy, not so much. Not good. Not a fan. If I was going to say hot garbage of the week or hot garbage of the line, this would be the hot garbage of the line for me. You guys tell me. You probably don't agree. I know there's a lot of Jeff Hardy fans out there, but ooh, just a rough head scan or whatever you want to call it. His face just does not work for me at all. Well, we continue on, and I knew way back in the day, even before finding out announcements and stuff, well, you're going to make Jeff Hardy. That means Matt Hardy's got to be coming along. He's not far behind, and they weren't kidding. He was in the very next set. We had Matt Hardy, which was better than Jeff, I felt, but not by much. They just did not get the face on these guys right. I give them props. He's throwing up the hand signal, sign, or whatever you want to call it. I did like that, but boy, that face. It's just too anime-inspired for me. It's like they lost their way with these a little bit, with Trish and the Hardys. Just did not work for me at all. There's the back packages. You can see that head scan a little bit better. I do say this one I do prefer over Trish and Jeff, but it's probably the third worst in the line. I did love that they had some of these guys on the back. Boy, there's some heavy hitters, you know, thinking about some of these guys. Thinking about that Mr. Fuji, we'd love to see a modern-day Mr. Fuji, that is for sure. Even the Shockmaster, Mattel's Shockmaster gets a lot of love, but, you know, Jakks did that one first. A really good JYD, that Ming's very hard to get. Dr. Death Steve Williams, one of my all-time favorites. I was so happy when he got in this line. And then even the original Sheik, Sabu's uncle, it was cool to see him. I mean, so many great figures in this Classic Superstars line. I can't wait till we walk down series by series. We'll have a series of videos of these coming very soon. But this is the Matt Hardy. Like I said, not a fan, but it is what it is at this point. There's no change in history. So next up, Series 27. Oh, wait. Here was the issue with 27. They didn't release a figure in the line. I remember thinking back, oh, great. They're finally stopping this madness. We're going to get back to our traditional one. A spot's going to be back open. But it must have been some kind of issue or some kind of error. As we didn't get a LJN styled inspired figure in Series 27. We did see prototypes of Dave Batista. He was going to come out in the line. I think it was for 27. It could have been for maybe 29. But that prototype exists. I want to say Matt Cardona, the Michael Jordan of Wrestling Figure Collection, as he is well known. I believe he has that prototype. I could have sworn he got that a year or 2 years ago, possibly. But I would have loved to have seen that Batista, I guess. Out of the guys that they've released out there, that Batista does fit. You know, he was starting to take off and fitted. It was a little different of a pose. I think that would have been okay if they were going to put something in there. But anyways, something happened in 27. We didn't get a figure. All right, here we are. The very last set of Classic Superstars, Series 28. And we got a repaint of Rey Mysterio. Unfortunately, the Classic Superstars line, like a lot of the other, we talk about that later Ruthless Aggression series, Jakks didn't go out on their sword. They didn't go out fighting. They went out saying, how can we save the most money possible? And Classic Superstars Series 28 was just a gut punch. It was a very rough set. We'll get in. You'll see the back set here, but you guys know right away, this Rey Mysterio, it's just an exact repaint of that orange one, using just different colors, but no other changes. That's how you save money in the figure game, obviously. There's Rey on the side. But it was very disappointing. Like, why do we need 2 Reys? Why did they re-choose this one? It must have just been handy. It must have been the easiest one to do and the best way to save money. So like I said, this was the dying line of Classic Superstars. You can see that final Classic Superstars series. I remember them announcing that series, saying, oh, Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. Oh, we're getting all heavy hitters. Well, all we did is get very generic, no accessories, no coats, no nothing, just bare bones as bare bones could be. That's final Classic Superstars series. Just so sad. After this series, they did release a Best of Classic Superstars series. They re-released, I remember Series 1 Classic Superstars started showing up once again. It was like they were just funneling everything else out of the warehouse they had. And I'm not shocked. They didn't put love into anything else. They were losing the line. Why would they put love into this final Rey Mysterio? They didn't, but it's understandable. You got to put themselves, at the end of the day, we all should be trying to make money at our jobs, and that's what Jakks was trying to do. They said, hey, we lost the license. It doesn't matter what we put out. We just have to finish off our contract. Let's just shove out whatever we can. We're lucky, actually, we even got these variant and repaint type figures at the end. We could have got nothing. Maybe some people would have preferred nothing. To me, I'd always prefer something over nothing, I guess. Let me do my choice. Let me choose how I want it or not. But there it is. Series 28, Rey Mysterio. Just a simple repaint. Unfortunately, they did not die on their sword. Alright, we've come to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed a stroll down memory lane of something I wasn't clamoring for. I'm not sure kids or collectors were clamoring for back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, these LJN-inspired figures. You know, it's very interesting how, you know, time changes things. I totally understand Jeremy Padawer's reasoning as a little love letter to the toys he played with as a kid. But for the most part, if me personally, I would have rather had another character, another wrestler instead of these as a subset. I would have liked to have seen this as a separate line outside of the Classic Superstars. You guys tell me in the comments, do you like this line? Did you collect this line? Do you have this line? Do you think they should have ran separately, a separate offshoot line, or did you like how they did it here with one in each set towards the end? You guys let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like Jakks Classic Superstars, I'm going to have a lot of videos. We're going to run series by series and go through them all. We'll talk about each one. I'll tell you some stories if I remember them of picking them up back in the day. We'll compare, we'll look, we'll take notes, we'll talk about it. So don't forget to subscribe because you don't want to miss any of that here very, very soon. So until next time, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys all real soon.